Excellent. All right. Well, hello everyone, and thank you for coming. My name's Tim Siers, and I'm the Technical Director at Oxide Interactive. Oxide is 12 years old and based here in Canberra, and we work mostly with federal government, crafting digital products with Drupal and for mobile. We've been working with Drupal for quite a while now, since about 2004, and we love new technology and fresh ideas and combining those things together. And hopefully you've been able to get a little sample of both of those things so far today. Also, just a quick thank you to all the people that helped put on the event today. I know that there's lots of moving parts in assembling an event like this, so thank you to them as well. Excellent. So I'm really glad that you're here today because we're going to be talking about better quality assurance for your whole team. So first of all, let's just touch on why quality is important and what that might look like. Now, firstly, you already know that quality digital products are important, of course. You've probably been involved in some of your own. You've probably have some that you've seen or aspire to. You may even have some that are on the boil right now. And I think it's important to note that quality has obviously been around for a long time. Before the internet, before software, before electronics, there's plenty of examples in ancient architecture or art that we would consider high quality. Now, if we translate the term from the manufacturing context into software, it goes from being tangible to more of an intangible concept, and sometimes that can be a little bit confusing. Obviously, your next Drupal project isn't going to be built from durable, lightweight, aluminium construction, or it's not going to be crafted from the finest quality leather, preserved with the highest grade oils. Instead, in this case, when we talk about quality, we're talking more here about the experience for our users. That is, allowing them to do what they need to do, get it done as quickly and easily as possible, and in a way that makes sense to them. Just for yourself, think about some of the online services that you've used that you would consider to be high quality. So this is reflected in the mission of the DTO when they say, back in action here, our mission is to put people first. We want to make government processes less complicated and less stressful for people, and as public servants we have an ethical obligation to deliver the best quality service in the quickest possible time. We're currently living in what Forrester calls the age of the consumer. We engage with billion-dollar products every day in the palm of our hands for free, and as such we have a growing expectation that that same level of experience will exist when dealing, say, with government. Now, I've spoken before about this, which is the expectation loop, but I'll just go over it briefly again because I think it's relevant in explaining why this is important. So the first item that you can see here is exposure. That is, we get a taste for something more engaging or more desirable. And I use the example of signing up for a bank account entirely online for the first time. That was pretty revolutionary when I did it. So you then grow to appreciate this, which is the second step, and how it's improved your life. In the case of online banking, I love the fact that I don't have to take time off work or skip my lunch break in order to go into a branch to get some banking done. This then turns into expectation. So I think to myself, if the bank can perfect this process, then why can't everyone else? And it's frustrating when now I'm asked to send back in a form or complete something that I can't do online. And then you can see the last one there is demand. So that expectation is now turned into demand. I find myself filtering services based on that very experience, whether or not I can do it online. If it looks like I can't, perhaps I'll skip them altogether. So what I'm highlighting here is that delivering quality services is absolutely essential. Again, a survey run by the DTO finds that we're making progress, but there's still a long way to go. You can see there that 35% of people and 23% of businesses still highlight a gap that's evident between government services and those provided by the private sector. So delivering quality digital products is a must. Now, there's many ways that we can do this, and obviously because of time, we're only going to be able to cover just a tiny little slice of that today. And as I said, I want to focus on quality assurance in your development team. So we won't be getting technical or writing code, but instead I hope to leave you with a few practical ways you can facilitate and inspire a better QA process on your next Drupal project and become more efficient in the process. So firstly, when we talk about team, we might be talking about slightly different things for different people. So for some, this might be the other developers that you work with, or you might be the developer in a team of other non-developers, such as designers, testers, or project managers. You might be looking to extend quality assurance in a team that you manage as a manager, or perhaps you're working with an external vendor on a project as well. And I hope that some of these things will be useful in understanding and bettering that relationship as well. So with that understanding and the directive from the DTO, we understand that quality really hinges on the experience of our users then, yes? So let's apply that back to what I mean when I say quality assurance, and that it's for your whole team. Now, I'm building here today on knowledge and experience of some great minds in this space, which we'll talk more about in a moment, such as James Bark, Michael Bolton of Rapid Software Testing, Sem Kainer, who's a professor of software engineering, and some smart people at Atlassian as well. And they've been working for many years on a lot of these concepts, and I'm bringing it all together for you here today. So with that in mind, I thought we'd look perhaps, say, at some myths that surround QA. And the first one I think that we'll start with is that QA is just finding bugs. So I found as a developer that quality assurance can sometimes be one of those slightly ambiguous things that might form a line item in a proposal or an RFQ or a project plan. And it might mean slightly different things to different people. You can't say that you're not interested in quality, obviously, yet you might not always have a clear picture of exactly the pieces that make that up. Of course, I'm not suggesting that any of you would prefer to skip the quality component altogether, but you don't know exactly what it looks like, and I have been in situations where that's been the case as well. It is, I guess what I'm saying is, it is complex. We'll have a look at it. I guess be careful not to slip into the idea that it's just something in a box that we can tick off. So we've spoken about quality relating to users, and I can tell by your face that you're totally on board with that. For me, however, it was the assurance part that gives clarity on the meaning of this term, what it means for myself and what it means for the rest of the team. So an assurance looks ahead to the future. It has a kind of intent, it has a promise built into it that implies putting things in place now rather than later. It carries certainty and confidence. So to flip it around, perhaps we could instead say the sentence as, I assure you, the quality of this work will meet your requirements. If you look it up in the dictionary, the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines assure as to make certain or to tell someone in a very strong and definite way that something will happen. So when providing quality assurance then, we're making certain that the end result will meet the level of quality required. With that in mind, to say that QA then is just about finding bugs takes a kind of almost just the retrospective part, the retrospective approach to quality, looking back on what has already been completed and finding defects in that rather than preventing them. Sem Kainer, a professor of software engineering and a leader on software testing, says in relation to test groups becoming QA groups, he says, testing is a technical investigation of a product done to expose quality-related information. Testers dig up useful information. This is good, but it doesn't ensure quality. He goes on to say, finding facts doesn't mean acting on facts. You need both to ensure quality. Facts and responsive action, plus proactive action that prevents bad facts from happening in the first place. So we've got a kind of three-pronged approach when we talk about it. Some people prefer the distinction put forward by the terms, perhaps more in a manufacturing context again. And that is, first of all, that we have quality control, and this is about finding defects, it's about finding problems that exist within the product. Think of it kind of like the person at the end of the production line, making sure that the car doors open and close properly, that the buttonholes and the buttons line up correctly. They're the quality control in the process. Perhaps you could say that it was similar to the analogy of a hospital, running tests, determining treatments, and fixing the illness. You can see quality control in that context has no role in preventing the actual defects from being created in the first place. So then you have the second part, which is called quality assurance, and that is the forward-looking part about preventing defects. It's about improving the process of creating the product to avoid defects being created in the first place. And using the same kind of hospital analogy, I guess, you could say that that might be equivalent to eating healthy food and doing regular exercise. For me, though, I am happy to use the term quality assurance to refer to more of the broad umbrella that encompasses all of these things in one, because modern software development is obviously becoming less and less like traditional manufacturing and production lines. So my point in all of this is that QA must be far more than just finding bugs at the end to assure our users of the best experience. It must involve the whole team, designers, developers, project managers, executives, as well as the product stakeholders as well. It must be a mix of looking back over work to find defects, as well as putting things in place to prevent them from occurring in the first place. Now, a big part of that for us in the Drupal development context is still obviously going to be testing. However, we should be testing as an investigation and an exploration rather than just as a confirmation. And we'll look a bit more at that in a moment. So we need designers, developers, project managers, and product owners all working together to manage a project toward a quality outcome. And it's more than just finding bugs. Okay, so I hear you. You're saying, yeah, Tim, that sounds really great. I'm on board with you. I know what you mean by QA. I think everyone should be involved. Yes. However, surely you don't expect developers to test their own work. So this is what we're going to look at next. This is myth number 2. And that is because developers can most certainly test their own work. However, I'll caveat that with given the right support and tools. In a blog post by Michael Bolton, who's a leader in the software testing field, he recounts an exchange that he overheard between Jerry Weinberg, who's another computer scientist who's involved in the Project Mercury space program, and others close by at the start of a conference presentation. And Jerry says to the other person, "You're in quality assurance?" he asked. "Yes," came the answer. "So you're allowed to change the source code for programs you test?" The person says, "No, definitely not." "That's interesting. Then how can you assure quality?" James Buck said in an interview, "Developers are the people who create quality. They make the quality happen. Without developers, nothing would be there. You'd have zero quality." What I'm getting at is that it is unreasonable to label part of your team as quality assurance and then expect them to have the ability to assure the quality of the work that's not their own and that they can't change. Instead, every member of the development team must assure the quality of their own work. Those who have the testing or QA role instead become the facilitators of that process. And I want to introduce a term to you that was coined by Sem Kainer that flips this around. And that is quality assistance, which keeps nicely with the 2-letter QA. You could be talking about either. So it is a role, quality assistance, that is, to help, investigate, to learn things and report them clearly. Again, this person doesn't own the quality. Instead, they help those that are responsible for quality and the things that influence it. So instead of QA being or the QA part of the process, as we call it, or the QA team being the safety net that developers can use for testing their own work, QA helps push developers and their applications towards the best results. I've always been of the opinion that a deeper understanding of testing, how to test, finding obscure bugs, strange edge cases, actually makes better developers. And I myself found almost by accident in my first job, I kind of came into this junior testing role. And I was testing CMS-driven websites like Drupal websites, and I was also testing small Flash games because back then Flash was still cool. And I devoted myself to trying to find the weirdest, strangest, most obscure bugs that I possibly could. Trying all sorts of things, mashing the keyboard and you name it. And what I discovered as a result of that is that now when working on my own projects, that I'm almost subconsciously leaning back on that experience from those earlier years of testing other work to account for certain situations in my own. Atlassian has implemented this as part of their quality assurance philosophy, and because they too believe that testing isn't some sort of magical gift that is only imparted to a select few. Instead, it's something that can be taught, and it can be learned, and can be developed. So, practically, what can you do to introduce this? Well, there's a couple of things that we'll talk about now and a couple later. So, encouraging the quality assistance, we've got a couple of things to try from Atlassian. First is developer on test. This is rotating your developers through testing to give them a better feel for the job. You know, perhaps the front-end guys will learn a bit more about the Drupal back-end and vice versa. The other one we have is blitz testing, and this is a nice small time-boxed window where the whole team gets in and tests the whole product. It goes gangbusters on it, and again, gives them a feel for what it is to do in that task so that they can use that in their development work later. And good old dog fooding. This term comes from the concept, the little phrase, eating your own dog food, which means to actually use the product that you've created yourself. So it's well and good to create something and send it off for someone else to use, but when you actually use it yourself, before releasing it into the wild or with a select group of people in your department or organization, you quickly realize, that Drupal view that we created is actually really clunky when I'm trying to use it in a rush. And, you wouldn't have necessarily known that had you not used it yourself. So what I hope that I've illustrated here is that while it would be unreasonable, I think, to ask a developer to produce 100% bug-free code in isolation, with a quality assistance model, the team will be far more efficient and produce better work rather than just kind of passing it off to QA to sign off on their behalf. So quality assistance gets the team working together and learning from each other, and that will result in hopefully them being better designers and developers who can then test their own work. Okay, so next. Well, we can't test until everything is complete. Again, thinking about that QA kind of step. So, like what I said before, I hope you're now on board with QA as quality assistance. You're ready to get developers and teams working together. Yeah, but you might be saying, what is the point of testing on work that isn't even finished? Shouldn't we wait till the end? And because of this common idea, we use language such as, well, we'll send it to QA, or, yep, that's now in QA, or, has that gone through QA yet? It's kind of like it's this step at the end of the process. And this is not unusual, and something that I myself have struggled with in the past as a tester. To test something that isn't completely finished seems like a waste of time, because you know that it'll go back, there'll be some changes, it'll come back to you, you're just going to have to test it all again. So why not just wait until it's actually finished? I got a nice little picture there. Send to QA. The downside is that this creates an environment where you can throw it over the wall, as I say, to testing and not have to worry about the quality of your own work. Just flip it over the wall, yep, it's in testing now. This, again, is part of the old way of thinking that we spoke about before. That is where bug finding is at the end. That bug finding is QA, and that doesn't count as adequate quality assurance. The QA process should exist to support development, helping developers do their job better. Again, Sem Kane also addresses this in another way by saying that under this kind of really strict waterfall approach, the features are all designed and developed up front, and that spends all their money on that. The work's done. So even if you were to chop stuff out, you've spent the money. The product then makes its way into system testing, may or may not be on time for that, might be a little bit late, and then a large number of bugs are found. Or perhaps the experience is lacking in some way. Now, the project manager is faced with a trade-off between quality and the launch date. Testers want time to fix the product and get it working really nicely. Stakeholders want to launch on time. So do we launch with a low-quality product, or do we launch late? And this kind of sounds like a bit of a rock and a hard place to choose between these two things. What we can do instead is involve QA throughout the process, throughout the development process, adopting a bit more of an agile approach. Now, don't be scared off by the fact that I've mentioned agile here, and I'm well aware that this does present challenges in government and gets thrown around a little bit too often as the silver bullet. The DTO promotes an agile approach based on agile principles, but also acknowledges that there's some challenges in doing that. So perhaps for the sake of this point, let's just assume that what I mean is bringing together your team to work on smaller parts. So if you can break down your job into features or little outcomes, then this can work for you. So each feature is tested at the level of quality required for release. And now what this means is that instead of the trade-off being between quality and the launch date, it's now between features and launch because we've worked in smaller parts. So the reliability of the product is now not called into question at all. Instead, it's whether or not we actually have enough product, which is a separate problem. So if QA isn't happening at the end, then when does it happen? Well, for this, I refer to Atlassian's process for quality assistance, which emphasises quality throughout the process and does not rely on QA teams to cause bottlenecks. They actually intentionally keep their ratio of testers to developers quite low in order to encourage this to work. Now, adapt this to your team as we have done with ours, but here's what you can try. So first, planning a discovery. And perhaps this is a topic for another talk, but the DTO says that the purpose of the discovery process is to help the team get a deep understanding of the problems they are setting out to address. So you do this by examining your users' needs and their experience. Cool, there's a whole bunch of stuff wrapped up in that. We'll go on to the next part though, which is the QA kickoff. This is where testers and developers and designers pair up to brainstorm and consider risks and edge cases. Rather than diving straight into that code, we can test ideas before it's even written, and we can do that based on past experience. So this serves two purposes. Firstly, to prevent problems early on, but also to capture problem areas that we might know in advance are going to need special attention. So we can make special note of those to account for those. An example might be that the tester recalls a particularly time-consuming incompatibility between two modules from a previous project, and that we should be aware of that in this project, so we can note that down. Or perhaps it's a performance consideration that might influence the particular approach before we've even started building it. Saves us time later on going down the wrong path. Third one, implementation. So developers implement the feature as described. They take care of anything that has come up in the QA kickoff. And obviously it's also vital that developers conduct their own testing to assure quality in their own work at this stage. It's okay if there's some bugs at the end of this. We can't find everything. And then the fourth is the QA demo. So after the implementation is complete, the tester and developer get back together again and conduct a little demo session. And if your demos are anything like mine, something will inevitably go wrong, and you'll notice something that you hadn't accounted for before that needs fixing. So this gets fixed and then you're good to go again. After this, then depending on the outcome of this, you can decide whether or not you want to dive into some of those other items like dog fooding or blitz testing that we mentioned before. So the key takeaway here is that quality was considered throughout development. It no doubt raised questions about usability, about scope, about budget, and these are all great conversations to be having earlier on. Doing this will avoid testing something for the first time once it's fully complete and makes QA more about that proactive prevention that we were talking about. So we've now managed to consider quality right from the beginning before a line of code's even been written. And how are we going for time? 5? Excellent. So last one, and that is automated tests are enough. I guess the fourth myth in this suite. So I read an interesting statement on the Atlassian blog that said, when developers find themselves responsible for testing, typically they'll try to solve this the same way they solve most problems, through code, in the form of automated tests. Something I picked up from James Bark is that it's important to remember that developers and testers or QA people are coming at the task from a different sort of mindsets, but heading toward the same goal. So developers are often building based on some requirements or some sort of loose specification perhaps, and that outlines how the feature is supposed to work, and they're totally focused on that, how it's supposed to work. Testers, on the other hand, are coming at the problem from a different way of thinking. They're actually seeking problems and expect to find them if only they look close enough. So this difference can create a bit of a conflict between traditional development and the testing team when testers do things that developers feel like their work wasn't designed to do. And this kind of, I guess, highlights that coming at it from different angles. For this reason, stopping with automated tests will almost often always result in narrowing the view of what anything should be doing rather than thinking about all the possibilities of what could be happening. Take, for example, a simple example of adding some numbers together. Based on inputs and outputs alone, these numbers go in, this number comes out. Yes, that is the sum of these two numbers, but it hasn't necessarily picked up that it's taken 6 hours to run and it's deleted files from your hard drive and it's done all this other random stuff. So I guess we must also in that watch out that automation doesn't outweigh the return, especially when we're doing all this work up front, because it can quite be an expensive investment as well. So we'll just skip to what the point is here. I guess my point is that although testing does involve some checking through automated tests, if that's all that's being done, then we would consider this to be poorly tested. I guess at times too much focus is placed on correctness, and it ignores the type of human testing that's required to inform deeper questions about value, which must be tested. So it's a healthy mix of both, balanced, of course, against the ongoing costs of maintaining these things. So to finish, I guess we've spoken about high quality digital experiences are very important for government. You heard about this in this morning's keynote as well. Get testers and developers working together in a quality assistance style of working, as developers are the best ones to assure quality in their own work. Weave the discussion about quality through the entire process, as it will end up saving you money and launching on time, hopefully. That is, QA from planning through kickoff, implementation, demos. And use automated testing, automated checking to assure quality in your own work, but continue to explore and test so we don't narrow our view about how the site could be used, rather than just thinking about how it should be used. So these are some of the ways that you can assure your users that the service you have developed has been designed for them and will meet their needs. So thank you.
Couple of minutes for questions, if there are any questions. Anybody?
Yep.
just briefly on that last point, the automated tests, and that real human testers test for things differently than an automated test written by a developer. Wouldn't then the logical step be that the person who does that human testing afterwards documents the steps that they took to do the tests and have that scripted up so that every single iteration from that point on, they don't have to manually run that test? Because if you were to test something manually on every single commit, which you absolutely should be testing every single commit, there's no time to do that anymore. Obviously, you should still have a human involved in the process, but maybe someone who's willing to try and make themselves obsolete during that process.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I guess we creamed through that last part because of time, but one of these guys puts it as well. He actually splits it into a little bit more detail and splits it into what he calls checking and testing. And checking is the things that a machine can do. And sometimes humans do them as well, such as in your example, but ultimately a machine can do those things. They're things that are just about confirmation and verification and validation. Totally, 100% we should make use of tools to take advantage of that, because as a result of that, developers can now get near instant feedback on the work that they're doing, and that is part of them assuring quality in their work. So the checking part by a machine, the testing part by a human, that's the kind of the learning and the investigating, and totally some of that stuff may flow back as well, keeping in mind, of course, the kind of the costs involved in that as well. If it's good value to do that, then 100%. Yeah. Anybody else? That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.